So this is a short discussion about Temple Grandin, and I went. Yeah, short, and everyone knows Temple Grandin. There's a movie about her childhood. There's HBO documentaries. She's written like probably dozens of books, and people have written many, many books about her. And she's a scientist that's diagnosed with autism in some way. And here I'm going to talk about how I first found out about her and what she's done, some of the inspiring projects she's done in the middle of her career, and I'll also share a bit about what her current goals are as well. And the way that it relates to addiction is really around this whole idea of helping every individual find an area that they can excel at, that they can thrive, and they can really contribute to the world, regardless of whatever brain differences they have compared to the average person or compared to neurotypical people. So I first encountered Temple Grandin when I was doing a workshop on motivational interviewing with a few of my colleagues at CAMH, and they like to use a video. And back in the 1800s, early 1900s, what did they do in order to tame horses? It was actually quite horrible what they used to do. They used to physically hurt them to the point that you'd break the horse and then you'd build it back up. And so it was really quite a painful process. And the video that we had in the workshop, as we were trying to show people how motivational interviewing works, is we showed a full 25-minute video. It was a 2-day workshop on motivational interviewing where they had this round circular fence, and the wild horse will come into it and it'll run around the outside. It'll run around the outside. It'll run around the outside. And then you have a gentleman in the middle who gently will sort of touch and then talk and then slowly put on something over its head, then saddle on, and then all those things. And they'll actually be able to train the horse to have a saddle and have a rider without physically hurting the horse. And it was Temple Grandin that really figured this out. She's somebody who has the diagnosis of autism, but it was made maybe a decade before psychology and psychiatry believed and spread the practice that autism was all related to the interactions with the mother and the lack of developing certain social skills due to their early home environment, as opposed to people with certain brain deficits where certain things had the potential to excel and other things just were not able to be easily learned. And so because her mother had her see a neurologist, there were certain things they knew she could do well. She did a lot of inventing growing up. So, for example, I think one thing she invented, she found that she would get quite uncomfortable around certain stimuli, and then she created this contraption that she could sort of sit in, and it would put this pressure around her, and then she'd be able to calm and relax. And she eventually adapted that to livestock to help soothe them as well. She also helped all these large organizations like McDonald's and Burger King come up with more humane ways of killing their livestock, for the burgers and such. And so she visited all these sites, and at these sites, she would work with the people on the ground. She said that she was able to, with minimal equipment purchase, she said that she'd always have to talk with people on the ground without the managers being around. And in a couple of rare cases, she had to do a managerectomy where the manager was no longer there. And so she worked there, and then eventually what she would do, she'd negotiate to get the managers to come and visit the site and visit the problems. And then once they saw it, then they found the workarounds. And I think one example would be that, the cows, when they would come out, sometimes they would just freeze. And they'd have these contraptions designed, and they just couldn't get them into it. And then she would go there and see from the cow's view. She knows there's a certain shadow, there's a certain light, or a certain billboard. And she would get that changed in order to have the animals do that. And she also has very clear rules, right, where you had to kill the animal in one shot, or all these different things that when you think about it now, it's clearly much more humane than was being done before to these animals. The other thing that she does is that she really thinks about things in first principles. So like a mechanical engineering kind of approach, as opposed to theories. And she's not able to process words the way that other people do, but she can always think in pictures and figure things out from first principles. And she wrote this book because she believes that's one of the skills that are being lost. She'll talk about how in the last 10 years, when she goes into elevators, she can hear the gears grinding. She's on airplanes, she can hear all the things that are working or that aren't working. And she's noticed a degradation. Part of it is that we're not training people in the trades. And something's happened in the last couple of decades where we've put a premium on university education, whereas in certain places like the Netherlands, what they'll do is around grade 9, they'll figure out, do you want to go into the trades or do you want to go into the universities? And then they'll continue some of these apprenticeship fields as well. And so she's written a book for kids on experiments where they keep thinking mechanically. The other thing that was really powerful is that she thought at first there's mainly word learners and visual learners. And while everyone can learn all these different ways of learning, certain people do certain things better. And especially if you have some of the rigidity in thinking that you see with certain kinds of autism, it's not easy to learn the other kinds that are there. And what she found out over a few years is that not everyone with autism thinks like her. And there was this term in the literature where they talk about visual object or visual spatial learners. And visual objects can see images of things quite clearly, whereas the spatial ones are the ones that can manipulate the object in the air and such as well. And part of me was just thinking about, my kids, right? Where, one of them is good with numbers, one of them is good with words. And then one of them just seems to think differently than others. And part of me is thinking, obviously, you want all three kids to be exposed to all those different kinds of things. But at the same time, if there's one area that someone needs to develop. And so I got this book as well. And so in the comments, basically, I'm going to include this autobiography of her that I went through. I also went through a book called The Autistic Brain by her as well. And with my kids this summer, I'm going to go through this Calling All Scientists book that I'll include there in the chat as well. And I think the reason it's really relevant for our work, I really believe everyone needs some area that they can excel in, some area that they can contribute in. And if you have that area that you're contributing in, participating with the world, making a difference, learning the specific skills, so even for things that don't come naturally, I think the potential is endless in terms of what we can do. And while she's inspired a lot of people for many, many different things, the thing for me that inspires me in listening to her is her current life purpose. And her current life purpose is really to help these people that don't succeed in traditional classrooms to really learn how to excel in the trades and to really learn how to use their mind in ways that it's designed where they really leverage their core capabilities and create an environment that they excel. So it's not like you're using the same curriculum for every kid, but you're really personalizing that curriculum, that the areas that they can excel, they're allowed to excel. And if certain areas that they're just not able to pick up, we don't use that as a thing to hold them back. And when you look at someone like Temple Grandin, where she spoke late, the neurologist described her as being brain damaged. And now she's a very prolific writer, a very prolific scientist, very highly sought after a consultant on things that are visual and engineering related and so forth. And she's also someone that just can't do algebra. She can't think in terms of symbols or words. It's really inspiring to all of us that we can find the right environment for the right person so that they can thrive. So thank you.